Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is
this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson, and either one of our counterparts just got married, and that's Josh Watson, or the other one is on holidays, and that's Cam Jenkins. So it's Claire and I holding down the fort for the time being, and then in a bit, Kelly McDonald will join us from Kelly and Ramya. So you're going to have a couple of one different voice anyway from the norm, and it's going to be fun. We're going to delve all into the Paralympic Games. Plus, we release another and the final Canadian Paralympic Committee Summit interview. Today, we speak with wheelchair rugby athlete Patrice Dagenais, and this was just prior to the Paralympic Games, so it will be an interesting conversation. And of course, we wrap up the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games, and you never know what else we might get into. But for now, we get into our headlines. As mentioned, Canada wraps up the Paralympic Games with a total of 29 medals. That's good for 12th place overall. Here's the breakdown of the medals. 10 gold, 9 silver, and 10 bronze for 29 medals, as I mentioned. And this surpasses their total from 4 years ago. So we know they had a good games. We're going to talk about it a bit later on and give you the final wrap, at least from the panel perspective, later on in the program.
Neutral Zone headlines.
The Ottawa Senators have announced a partnership with Canadian golfer Brooke Henderson. As part of the agreement, her golf towels and water bottles will have Senators branding on them. Brooke and her sister Brittany, who serves as her caddy, will also wear Sens colors 1 day per tournament. Henderson calls this a perfect match as she grew up watching the Ottawa Senators both at home and in the arena.
Number 1 seed for the tennis world, Jannik Sinner won the tennis US Open this past week. We congratulate him. On the women's side, we see Aryna Sabalenka, who won the US Open, so congratulations to both of them. And I gotta be honest, because the Paralympics sucked up most of my brain power and streaming, I didn't get to see a lot of the US Open once all of the Canadians were out early in round 2. So it's one of my favorite events to tune into, but an even bigger event for me is the Paralympic Games. So that's why that event for me didn't take up a lot of my oxygen and mind space this year. But from what I saw, it was a good event and well supported as per usual. Those are your headlines for this week. If you want to get a hold of us on social media, here's how you can do it.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball!
We're set to get this bowl game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone VR. Pitch and a strike. Hey gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play.
Out!
And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. And the Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.
Recently, I got the chance to go to the Canadian Paralympic Committee Summit, and for our last interview, we're going to hear from Patrice Dagenais from Wheelchair Rugby. I hope you enjoy the interview.
My name is Patrice Dagenais. I'm from Embrun, Ontario, and I play wheelchair rugby.
And that's the reason I have the athletes say their name, because there's no way I would have said it as phonetically wonderful as you just did. See, Mark, that's the reason I do these things. That's my technical person that will edit all this. Okay, so can you start by telling us how you got involved in the sport of wheelchair rugby?
Yeah, so I started playing wheelchair rugby in 2005. I suffered a spinal cord injury in 2003, so after my injury, obviously I couldn't play the same sports as before. I was a hockey player, so I was hoping and looking to join a different sport, a parasport. So I was invited to a practice at the rehab center in Ottawa with the club team, the Ottawa Stingers, and that's when I started. They lent me a chair. I got to play, and the competition is something I really missed. The 2-year span where I didn't really have a chance to compete, so I fell in love with the sport right away.
My understanding is that you like to give back to schools and rehab centers. Why is that important to you?
Because I see the difference of how parasport had a positive impact in my life. After you suffer an injury like that, you're kind of lost. You're not sure what's going to happen in the future. And I was fortunate enough to find a new passion in the sport. I grew up, idolizing professional athletes, Olympians. So having this goal to one day represent my country and go to the Paralympic Games is what kept me motivated and positive in that time. So I want to make sure as much as possible that I can share that experience with other people. So if there's newly injured patients at the rehab centers or kids with physical disabilities, I want to get them involved in sport because I know how it could impact their life in a positive way.
And is that the messaging you give to people, is that, look, sport can help you in a positive way, or is there other messaging that you try to convey beyond that as well?
No, I think it's definitely one of the messages to try at least at first. And even if you're not that much into sport, you can still join a club, practice, and for the social part of it, the camaraderie. So just being around people that have maybe similar challenges as you, it's good, right? To share some experience, learn from each other. So it's much more than just sport, to be honest. For me, it was being able to be independent by learning from others. So there's so many things that sports can bring to you.
I love that. I think sports people always think as a competition, and they always think, oh, it's a competition, you compete. But I think, as you point out, it does go beyond that, and I think it's really, truly important. Was there somebody for you that during your rehab inspired you, helped pick you up off the mat, proverbially, that really got you going?
Yeah, I was lucky enough because wheelchair rugby, there's not that many players in Canada, but there was one that lived in the same town as me in Embrun. So he was on the national team when I got injured. So he helped me, welcome me to the wheelchair rugby community. Same when I went for the first time to the selection camp with Team Canada. He was there, so it was kind of nice to already have a friend and someone when you meet new people. So his name is Ron Larocque. He competed in 2 Paralympic Games in Barcelona in track and field, and then in Sydney in wheelchair rugby. So it was kind of nice to have that role model so close to my home.
There's been a couple of people that I've interviewed here and beyond for the podcast that have had mainstream sport injuries, and the one thing that I kind of wonder, was there ever a moment that you yourself were scared of sports because that's the place that caused the injury to you?
Actually, no, my injury wasn't sports related. I fell, I was working construction, and I fell 2 stories. So yeah, I mean, I've always played sports before and never got injured playing sports. So even when it came time to play wheelchair rugby, I never thought twice about getting injured. So it was never a concern.
As you embark on this journey with wheelchair rugby and you're going to go into this qualifier, how are you feeling heading into this event?
Feel confident. I mean, we know as a team that we can go there, perform, and qualify for the Paralympics. There's 3 spots available. It's going to be 8-team tournament, so we need to finish top 3. But yeah, we're ranked 5th in the world right now. So as long as we take care of business, do what we know how to do, we'll be fine.
And having that positivity is helpful. How important during this, I put this in quotations, pressure tournament, is it that you have team bonding, team building, or do you already know this is like a brotherhood, you don't really need the bonding and building? I
mean, I think it's something you always want to keep working on, right? The team building and team bonding. We have the core group of players on our team. We've been together for a while, so we all know each other. We're all friends, right? So I don't think we feel like we have a good chemistry and a good atmosphere on our team. So yeah, I mean, it's something we always want to have fun outside of the game, right? Hang out as a team, go to team dinner, do different activities. But we feel like we have a strong relationship with this team.
That's really good. It's important to have that strong bond. When you go to big events, is there something that you need to pack to either make you feel, comfortable at home or from home or whatever? Is there something that you say, I need to have this, even if it's just psychological?
It's a good question. Yeah. I mean, usually what I bring is something I need. So, I like to have my headphones, obviously, because I like to listen to music sometimes, before the game or after, just to relax. But, I do use my headphones, especially for travel. But I think everything I need is, or everything I bring is things that I will probably use at some point.
How important is routine when you go to the events like this and doing the same thing to help you mentally and physically?
Yeah, I think routines are very important, and especially when you go to Paralympic Games, there can be some distractions. There's so many athletes there. There's entertainment. There's things that you can go do, between games and whatnot. There's the food hall that's always open. So it's making sure you make those right decisions and stick with the routine that you have when you're at home, when you're competing in lower, level competitions, because you don't want to go to the Paralympics and then change your routine, because that might have a negative effect on you on the court.
It's interesting, because that food hall that you speak of, that thing's like 4 Costco sizes. Like, there is food from everywhere. Good food, bad food, and all that sort of stuff. Do you guys, as a group, hold yourself accountable in general, or do you hold yourself accountable individually more than as a group?
I mean, I think it starts individually, that we should hold ourselves accountable, but there are times that we need to do it as a team. If we see a teammate, it might not be making the right decision, especially maybe the younger ones, right? Because they don't always know what's best for them. We try to help them out in a polite, respectful way, but if it needs to be said, it will be said.
Like hanging out in the McDonald's lineup in the middle of your competition at the village?
Exactly. That would not be the smartest decision.
I mean, for me, my first Paralympic Games in 2008, that McDonald's lineup was pretty tempting with those free McFlurries and that kind of thing. And it takes that senior person to kind of tap you on the shoulder and go, we're here doing a job, get away from here. And I think when the event's over, you can kind of do what you feel you need to do. But it's tough, and I think you have to build relationships where that little tap on the shoulder is not an offensive tap. It's a reminder of like, hey man, we're doing a thing here.
You need to be able to have some self-control and stay disciplined, especially in that moment, right? So if you can't do it at the Paralympic Games, you're probably not going to be very disciplined at home either. So just, stay the course, stay focused, and then after the game, then you can eat as many McFlurries as you want.
I know that Shane Smith has been a part of your program for a long time, and he's had some health concerns that have been documented on our program, and we've interviewed him. For you, what's it like seeing a, for all intents and purposes, brother going through what he's going through?
No, I mean, obviously it's difficult when you have a teammate that's having health issues and serious health issues. But I think as a team we supported him. I think he knows that we were there. We're still there for him because it's obviously something that's going to have to deal with probably a little longer. But it's good to see that he went through what he needed to do, and now he's healthier. He's back in the chair, practicing, getting back in rugby shape. So we wish him the best, and he's gonna have an opportunity to showcase what he can do on the court, and obviously he's gonna want to try to make the team for the Paris Paralympics.
I saw a video of Shane on social media. He entered the practice facility, and the team pretty much went bananas to see Shane. When you see someone that you've been a teammate of, when you see them after a long time, what's that reaction? Because I think a lot of people sit there and say, well, they're just a teammate, they're just people, and so they come to the practice. Like, what's that feeling like? The guy's been away and he comes back and everyone just kind of celebrates him and lets him know that he's still loved and supported.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. Wheelchair rugby, for me, is different than a lot of sports. It's more of a community, family field than a business or an organization. So we care a lot about our teammates. We go to battle with them, right? So when we play at any competition, let's say Paralympic Games, we play for each other, right? We play for our teammates, the person next to you, and everybody's got to give their all. So it is like a family environment that we have, which makes that's why some of us have been playing for 20 years plus, and that's why we're still on the team, because we're enjoying ourselves, because it feels good, to be surrounded by brothers and sisters.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. We greatly appreciate it, and best of luck going forward to Paris 2024.
Thank you very much.
The Neutral Zone is sponsored by the Ontario Para Network. Their focus on the growth and development of wheelchair basketball, tennis, and rugby in Ontario.
It's always a privilege for me when I get to share the airways with the individual that's joining us on the panel. And I told you who he was off the top, but it's the host of Kelly and Ramya. He's also my mentor, my friend. There's some changes going on with Kelly and Ramya. You can soon catch them from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. They're on a hiatus if you're listening to it the week of September 9th, but they will return. Kelly, so nice to have you back on the Neutral Zone with us. It's a pleasure to have you.
We'll see, Claire, if he agrees in a moment. 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
Oh.
That's when it'll be on.
Why did that?
Oh, man, come on. Think of us. We're that group that would say, oh, do you have the choice 2 or 3? I can finish earlier if I say 2.
Yeah. I feel like then you and I must have talked about you saying that you wished it started at 3 for a moment, but
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I have said that to people, but not too loudly because everybody else would you be quiet, please? Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. So let me correct that. You can catch Kelly and Ramya beginning next week if you're listening to the podcast this week. You can catch them next week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, still on AMI TV and simulcast on AMI Audio, which, by the way, Kelly, I love the fact that they went back to simulcasting on audio. So that's cool.
Oh, us too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, us too. It's really a nice thing to be able to always include everybody around the world, and people who just said, I want to listen live. I'm going to listen to it, and I want to listen to it live. That's what I want to do. I don't want to have to listen to it just through the podcast or later on. So we really appreciate it.
I don't know. It's not the same listening to a show on podcast. I mean, commercial free, sure, but yeah, I don't know. I just like the fact that it's simulcast on audio. Anyway, as we mentioned off the top of the program, the Paralympics is done, and Canada received 29 medals, as mentioned, and just like that, 12 days of competition is now finished, and the Paralympics and Olympics is wrapped up in Paris. On the whole, without going into too much detail, because we're going to do the good, the bad, the ugly in a couple of minutes, but how would you say that Canada fared overall? We'll start with our guest, Kelly McDonald, and move straight over to Claire.
I know people would say on medals, we did okay. We're up there in the top 15. And I think a country like Canada, with our population and the complement of people who went there, really good. Fedora's off to them. I really like what we did. I thought it was nice to root for a certain amount of people. Well, I mean, for everyone, but we had our certain names. So I have to say, I think we did pretty darn well. I just don't compare us to China, who did amazingly over the top well.
Yeah, China definitely dominated the Paralympics, and I'd say Canada did extremely well. I would use the word historic. We saw a lot of firsts. We saw a lot of athletes making their Paralympic debut as well for Canada. It was an exciting Paralympic Games, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to say that I thought that Paris lived up to the hype. They lived up to what they said they were going to do, and they did it well, right from the opening ceremony right to the end of the closing ceremony. It was really, really good. I'm going to lead us off with some highlights here from the games from my perspective. Claire, you mentioned some historic stuff, and the first historic thing that I would suggest is the women's sitting volleyball team, first ever Paralympic medal, which was bronze. I would also add Brianna Hennessy winning a silver medal in canoe, and this is really great. She was also the co-flag bearer beside Nicholas Bennett. Nicholas had 3 medals at the games, which was really good. So those are some of my highlights. Claire, what would you say for you was a highlight?
Yeah, I would agree with you with the sitting volleyball. It was Canada's very first medal in the sport. So congratulations to them. And I'm glad that you brought up Brianna as well. That was such a journey for her, specifically losing her mom recently and pushing for Paralympics and a medal was so nice to see for her. And it's a time where we are seeing wheelchair basketball in Canada be closer to where we know it can be. I don't know who said it after the bronze medal game when Canada played China in the women's game, but they said that they are proving that Canada is right up there with the best in the world again. And I can't wait to see what they do over the next 4 years and seeing these next generation of players evolve as well.
Kelly, what about you? Would you say you had any highlights from the games?
You know, I can't say I had a specific one. I mean, I'm always blown away by the overall what the country does, the people participating, the names that you know and are familiar with. And then sometimes you say, oh, geez, that didn't happen for them. We expected it. But I think really the newcomers that have just gone there for the first time and actually medaled. You know, again, it's not all about medaling. It's about having great performances. It's about pushing yourself. It's about showing up and not just enjoying what you get to do on something so unique on a specific event. It's the success, if you can have it in medaling, but the success of just being there, all the first timers and getting a chance, it just shows you back here and around, it's alive, as opposed to where you sometimes feel we talk about the people we're most familiar with. This is their third, this is their fourth. But when you can talk so much about this is their first, and we get the attention because they medaled, okay, absolutely fantastic. But all the first timers, that I think is really impressive. And the names becoming more household names like Olympians do.
I mean, I think the other, and I'm doing this as a whole, 13 medals in the pool, that's a lot of medals. You had Nicholas Bennett with 3, as I mentioned earlier. You had Arlie Rivard with 3, gold, silver, bronze. Those are 6 of the 13 right there in that moment. But the pool is always a place where you're going to expect, because of so many disciplines, so many athletes that exist in that sport. The track had 9 medals, including Ontario's own Austin Smink, who won 2 medals at the games. And that's pretty impressive for a guy who, I believe it's his second games, if memory serves me correctly. I mean, there were lots of highlights, and we could spend the whole hour discussing the highlights that existed in the games. And that brings us to the lowlights that existed at the games. And Claire, my first lowlight is the men's and women's wheelchair basketball. I guess I'm kind of the guy that says, I don't know, I wanted to see them on the podium. I know they were right there with the best in the world. It was 20 years since the last time the women have won a medal. I thought we were going to be there. I thought that we were going to get there, but the men specifically really, really disappointed me against Germany. I mean, in the bronze medal game, they just fell off the train. And they beat Germany in the round robin, which clearly doesn't mean a whole lot, but for me, that's a disappointment. Do you have any disappointments from the games, Claire?
Yes. I mean, we can look at the wheelchair basketball tournaments in both a positive and negative light, where coming into Paris, we didn't expect the men to be in any medaling and games. We did for the women. We absolutely saw the women going home with a medal, and that in itself is a disappointment. But the men surprised us. The men 2 years ago were 8th in the world, and now both teams are 4th. And yes, it was a disappointment in some regard, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I believe, for Canada in regards to wheelchair basketball. Another kind of disappointment was rugby. That was another sport that I think we went in really hopeful and it was promising to get on to the podium. And boccia too. We see how good those athletes are representing Canada and what they've done in the sport. And they just missed the mark as well.
Kelly, what about you? What would you say were lowlights?
Well, I mean, I was a little sad about judo. A little bit there with the presence there or lack thereof, but for sure being a former goalball player many moons ago for Ontario, seeing no male team, seeing the female team do so well in their first game with scoring and making you feel all right, knowing they have the defense, but you're going to let some goals in and not being able to take care of that and counter the couple of goals that you do let in, or if you have the strong defense, you can't score and you get to a tie. I was really, I don't want to say surprised, because I worried about this last time watching them play, that, maybe we're kind of getting into a bit of a rut with the team, and maybe knowing this is somewhat of a offensive team drought that we have seen rear its head and hold this team back. So I think that was my biggest disappointment, as being a person who really does tune in to follow all the goal ball. And there were some amazing goal ball games, but some of the teams, I'm thinking of the U.S. men's team, like, hey, guys, where's your defense? Some of the games were very lopsided to stuff like that, where you see a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I think, when you look at para sports particularly, I think athletes can or are given the privilege of being able to write their own ticket of the beginning, the middle, and the end of their career. And that, I look at somebody like Patrick Anderson on the men's side, 6 Paralympic Games. That team is not going to turn their back on him until he says, I'm done. You and I talked about it offline a little bit.
Yeah. Do we wait too long? Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Like, do we wait till I decide I'm done now?
Yeah. And I think possibly, that because of the depth of field and the depth going in, I think that's why some national sports organizations kind of go, well, this is my team. This is the horses I'm going to ride with. And we're not seeing the development, develop underneath that team, where it's just, we kind of ride or we die with them, and pardon the expression there, but it just, to me, that's the reality that I see. And I'm not saying that Patrick Anderson has reached the end of his rope, because he's still performing at a very, very high level, but I just see para athletes, particularly when they reach sort of the end of their peak, it's not the organization saying we'll move on because we have this fresh blood coming. It's the person able to write their own ticket and say,
we have to replace them.
We're going to do this because now we have to replace them, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I really believe that that's kind of the story that we're going to see from now until LA 2028 with the men's side specifically, is who's retiring and how are they going to properly develop their bench players and get that next generation up to par. Because if in the next 4 years, I mean, we're talking about Patrick Anderson specifically, is he retiring? Will he retire? I mean, if that does happen, that's a huge chunk of their performance taken away. He played pretty much full games throughout the Paris Paralympic Games. So it's going to be interesting how they develop these next players like Reed and Blaze, and it's you have to put them on the court to develop them. You can only do so much in practice. These next athletes, they need to see court time.
You can really only get so much from watching, the veterans do their thing. And I mean, there is something to be said, Kelly, about watching the veterans do their thing, but you really do need that on-court experience. And from the wheelchair basketball side of things, I didn't see a lot of Blaze. I didn't see a lot of Tamara Steves, and those are all people, particularly in wheelchair basketball, that could go on for another cycle, but if they don't have the feel, that Paralympic Games can be eyes wide open when you get there, and those lights shine pretty bright.
I saw that this is the way I felt with goalball, and again, I'm very distant from the program and what goes on and who's there, but you start wondering, why is there no guys team? It's not like goalball's one of the sports where you struggle finding people across Canada playing it. There's a lot of even recreational goalball across Canada. Where are these people? Where are these guys? What is stopping them? And is there a viewpoint of, well, I can't get in there. I go to a tournament, I play, you roll out the Ontario team or the national team. There's no room for me anywhere. No one's stepping aside to let me in. No one's running a camp where I get a fair chance to play. And if I obviously don't make a national team, is there a national team B? Is there somewhere I can go? And with all the other teams, there is, but I don't quite understand. And I'm not trying to hold fault with anybody, for example, on the ladies team. There's some great work going on there. I know last time we had a lot of injury. I don't know what they're saying the problem will be, and I'm not sure what we're going to see. I've heard some say this is my last one, so maybe that fresh blood that I know is out there will be the difference.
Before we talk about other things that are more, post games, I want to shout out the closing ceremonies and talk about that for a bit, but not so much from what happened at the ceremony, but I just want to shout out Scott Russell, who really, really did an outstanding job as his final, host of the Paralympic Games. And he really took the time to thank coaches, athletes, supporters, NSOs, national sport organizations. And then he said, I don't know about you, and then paused for a couple of seconds while holding back tears. And he said, I had the time of my life, all being choked up, and said, thank you. And that was the end of the broadcast. Your reaction, I guess, as we see Scott Russell hang it up for the last time. Kelly, start with you, and then we'll go straight over to Claire.
I had the privilege of working with Scott on a project at the CBC Broadcast Center, and it was, I don't know how long ago. It had to be more than 10 years ago now. I think it was before I was started doing the TV work that I was doing, and we were working on something. And him and I had this really long talk. And at that time, I didn't know a lot about Scott Russell. Boy, did I enjoy the talk, because it was the first time I got to speak to someone in media about para-athletes, about para-sport in any capacity. But the thing that just knocked me to the floor was the fact this guy knew rings around whatever I could speak about it. And he's a broadcaster who was making his bread and butter on discussing para-sport. It was just, he had me gobsmacked. And I was so proud, so pleased, walked out of there and said, that's the future. This is that person that's like Superman, grabbing you and putting you under his arms, and into the sky he goes, flying the banner of parasport. So when I watched the other day, I like Scott, had my eyes full of tears too, because I hate when any broadcasters go away. But for one of the first times, it was so different. I mean, I was great friends with Jerry Howarth and got to know him and had him as a mentor. And I understood when Jerry retired, it was time. And maybe because I still communicate with him, okay. But Scott Russell, and we know he'll come back around, it really did catch me emotionally.
Scott Russell has been the standard of the above standard image of not only broadcasting, but yes, being that true ally for parasport. And watching him, this Paralympics specifically, I was watching the athletes and there for the athlete stories, and that's what the focus is on. But I truly made an effort to really pay attention to Scott and how he went about things, and how he spoke, and how he really puts the athletes' stories and journeys at such a high regard. And I have had the pleasure of connecting with him in person. He hosted the Toronto Sports Hall of Fame, where I got inducted that year. And to meet him in person has been an honor. And such, yes, Kelly, you said it perfectly. Having a conversation with that man is kind of life-changing. He just speaks so well and wants to get to know you really well as well. So I have the pleasure of being at an event next month where we will be celebrating our athletes at the Canadian Sport Institute. And again, he will be the keynote speaker there. And to truly be able to see him in person and do what he does and seemingly effortlessly as well is it's, as a broadcaster myself that kind of fell into broadcasting thanks to Brock in the neutral zone. It's been wonderful to learn from someone like that and being able to see just the passion he puts towards it.
You know, as I watched that the whole Paralympic Games, I actually, at the end of the Olympic Games, I had this thought of, you know, maybe he'll say goodbye to that audience and then come and do it for the Paralympics as well. But I have the utmost respect for the man who did his closing when his closing was. It's not like he assumed that there was a quote unquote better audience over at the Olympics than there would have been at the Paralympics. He did the closing where the closing was. So I respect him for that. Number two, I have been in the shoes of Scott Russell more often than I'd like to understand over the last little while with this program and with others that I've been a part of. And I have been in that choked up position and tried to get through it. And Scott it was almost even more heartbreaking because he stayed all the way steady with his voice, normal Scott Russell, until he said, I don't know about you, and then he paused, and then it hit him. And I think that was the moment where I realized Scott's human. This isn't just a robotic broadcaster who put in his time for 40 years, did it all. I went back out of interest this afternoon, and I went back and I watched the other veteran, Brian Williams, who finished in Vancouver, who did a wrap-up, who did not get choked up. And I'm not suggesting that he was or wasn't, but I think for me, sometimes we put broadcasters in this bag that's like, they are the ultimate professional and they don't break. And that to me was what I saw with Brian Williams, was he didn't break. Scott, he broke, and I appreciated it, Kelly, because that was the moment where I was like, okay, there's the human.
Yeah, two things. He's a champion for, I think, a world that we relate to differently than others. Maybe other people say, oh, that's too bad. Oh, man. But I honestly feel, as the spokesman for parasport, for disability, not just sport, it was, and we know he's not going to go too far, but it's not going to be the same. Secondly, I really wonder, and again, I felt it, but I'm not going to pretend to be a CBC aficionado and know all their talent and stuff like that are on air. But I really do wonder how much he led by example and how many of his colleagues will pick up that banner behind him. Not try to be Scott, try to do as Scott would do.
That perfectly describes Devin Haru. Hearing him talk about how he's learned from just being side by side with Scott Russell, and you see how Devin speaks to and about the athletes that he interviews. You can put Scott on his own, ahead and on his own from everyone else, but Devin isn't that far behind either. And he's just getting started in his career, I believe. And it's going to be exciting. And we're going to get the same passion for parasport from an able-bodied broadcaster than we have with Scott Russell. And that in itself shows the influence that Scott has had on his fellow broadcasters.
Totally agree with you there. It's going to be interesting to see who fills that seat in 2 years' time when we get to the Winter Paralympic Games. Because funny enough, the Winter Paralympic Games don't have that event a year prior to the games. It's just summer that has Para-Pan Am, which, by the way, I find very interesting that there's no Para-Pan Am equivalent on the winter side, but that's something I've learned over the last little while, and both Devin and Scott have been nothing but gracious with their time, and Devin's is going to continue because he believes in what this program does, this product is doing, and that I'd be forever grateful for that, for the time that Scott gave us. He did not get choked up that it was going to be his last time on the neutral zone, which I'm fine with. But
aren't you surprised?
Yeah, I know, right? How dare he? It was.
I thought the tears would fall.
Right? Yeah, totally.
Well, you said it, Kelly. He's not. I think he's just going to be lingering not too far away. Anyway, I don't know if that was his last time.
I wonder if Devin wants to be a host like Scott, because he seems like he goes just all in for those stories, talking to the Jacobs and so on, and just going and doing that part of it. And I know Scott in his time obviously did all that stuff too when this started to roll like it has, but you always wonder, what will that be? And as you said, who will that other person emerge, whether they do more of what Devin's doing, or maybe they're more of that lead who's been sitting there as well in the background saying, and maybe even handpicked by Scott.
Something that I've noticed on social media a little bit since the Paralympics have ended is that you see athletes who maybe were expected to do better than what they did, and you're seeing things like, the sun will rise tomorrow even though I didn't get a medal, or it hurts right now and I'll be okay. I just wanted to get you guys' perspective on how do athletes move on from that, because we do often put ourselves in these 4-year windows, and it does take a while for these 4-year windows to come back. And so when you see athletes who didn't have success and didn't make the podium when they were expected to, and you see this hurts right now, but the sun will rise tomorrow, that's jarring, but you know that it hurts. So how do we move on from that? And what would you say to an athlete who might be going through that? Start with you, Claire, and then we'll go to Kelly right away.
Good sports psychologists. I think that athletes, being a high performance athlete myself, yes, your mindset is in these blocks of times of what the next big event and what we are training for next. And at the same time, it's a mindset of, okay, yes, I'm going to make sure that I process this and move through it in a healthy way. But also the preparation for your next World Championships or LA 2028 truly starts now. We keep talking about the wheelchair basketball programs. Seeding matters. When you're in a team sport and a tournament style sport, it's seeding is at a high regard, and it's part of the game, and it starts right now. So you really have to think about, okay, what is next? And it comes along with your support system. Athletes need that support of being able to go through the emotions and facing the reality of stuff. We haven't touched on Renee Fassel, but we expected her to podium as well, and she's been the proverbial fourth place Canadian thrower in her Paralympic career, and she got sixth in Paris. So I'm sure athletes who kind of had an experience like hers it's going to be a tough block of time, and with each athlete it takes a different amount of time, and you move through it the way that you need to. But yes, you got to move on to the next event, because 2028 it starts now.
It's got to be interesting too, because through Worlds and so on, you see who your likely competition. You keep checking on who's likely to give you the most competition, potentially beat you out, or who you think you can beat, and then probably somebody comes out of nowhere and you're like, what? And that's got to even be harder. It's sort of like at least a baseball pitcher, if he has a bad game, he has to wait 4 or 5 days before pitching in. Those are just mere days. But when you talk 4 years, you stop and say, oh, good heavens. But I agree with Claire. You get right back in. With my theater projects, when I was busiest in theater, I used to overlap. As soon as one show finished on a Sunday, I was already studying lines for the next show on Monday morning, because you had to keep in the game, to keep going. I was raised by a football coaching father who really tried to teach good sportsmanship. And part of that was being able to take your failures the right way, build from them, be graceful as you can, but also be tough about it. Be PO'd at yourself and push yourself harder without hurting yourself. But that was all part of the game and what it was all about, the lifetime that you took to do this, the dedication. And it's going to come with tripping, falling, standing up, and being able to raise a medal or raise your arms in victory. All of that's part of it. And at any one time, those peaks and valleys can be pretty roller coaster. So I tried to learn a lot of that and took from what that was for my sports. And I've played enough sports in my younger years to know, and to certainly walk away feeling like, screwed that up, or boy, were we terrible. And sometimes you got to eat that for quite a while. So as an individual, you want to be successful, but you've got a lot of people pulling for you, working with you, and your dedication to it is really what gets you through. But I don't know. It's easy always to say, oh, you just got to have fun. Fun only carries so far.
Famous last words of my coaches was just have fun. If you're not enjoying the sport, then, politely, then you need to remove yourself and move on. And I, at the Paralympic Games, had 2 dark phases, and I'm going to go back to Renee because I watched 4 out of her 6 throws, and something rang very true with me with what I went through. But I'll start by telling you, after 2008, I went through this period of, oh my God, 4 years is so long. What am I going to do with myself? And I really felt like all that defined me was the athlete. I really didn't know what the next part of me was. I had just finished school or was finishing up school, and the next phase was, okay, well, I guess I go to London 2012 and do that. Broadcasting was not in the distance at that point after 2008. And 4 years later, 2012 came around, and I was the only bocce class 1 on my country, and that came with a lot of pressure in and of itself, because if I wasn't able to play, then the whole team wasn't able to play that I was a part of. So that was scary. And this is where I relate to Renee. After about the third throw of Renee, what I started to see was body language that made me feel like, you kind of have that I'm checked out, I'm pissed off that I've fouled, 2 out of my first 3 throws. And that's the part that scared me about the body language of Renee, because it was really that moment of like, do you already have 1 foot outside the circle? And that's kind of what I felt. And to me, she's going to have a real tough challenge with the next couple of days, because Claire, as you know, she is beginning to move on with her life. And when you have that kind of performance, and if the body language that I read was true, that can be real tough to pull yourself out the other side.
It really is. At that level of sport, you dive all in. You take all distractions away, and you kind of put those other things on a shelf for later and really focus on just the athlete part of your life. And we don't talk a lot about the post-Olympic and post-Paralympic depression that some athletes go through, and they feel a sense of like losing their identity if they walk away. I've only done sports my whole life, and now what do I do? How do I transition to these new things and new pieces of me that I haven't been able to shine a light on just yet? And so it's a tough transition, but again, it's something that needs to be highlighted with intentional support, not just from your friends and family, but truly making sure that those athletes making those decisions and going through the process of what those decisions are going to be, make sure you're getting the right support to go through that.
Because if you're not getting the right support, Kelly, you're gonna make an emotional decision that you're gonna regret, and that's scary. That is.
Well, is that support there? Like, I mean, Brock, you made a decision to retire. And I know we talk about this with other people. Like, what am I now? Who am I now? What am I going to do? Tom Brady's going to jump in the broadcast booth, but he had to make sure I got to play till I'm ready to jump in the broadcast booth.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I can speak for myself that within Canada, having programs through Sport Canada and making sure that athletes do have those resources are out there through Athletes Can and Game Plan through CSIO. Those Canada has definitely put in the intentional effort in making sure that those supports are there. I haven't played wheelchair basketball since 2018, and I still have a Game Plan advisor that helps me with resources of job placements and making sure I have support through mental health supports and having those conversations of, okay, what do you want to put all that energy into outside of sports and really making sure that those options are out there and the conversations happen. Because a lot of the time, athletes and humans going through a transition, you don't know what questions to ask. So having some support and those organizations that reach out to you first to start those conversations and have those answers already there for you. It's we're very lucky within Canada to have that.
Yeah, I can tell you that when I went through my experience, 2 things I'll tell you. I reached out to my NSO and I said, so what's the plan here? Because this is what I'm going through, and I haven't even written the retirement message that I wrote and sobbed at my computer till my wife came home, and I was literally on my computer like sobbing. Like, she thought that something had happened within my family, and like she knew that I was writing it on that day, but I don't think she realized until that moment when she walked in the door and I was on my computer desk sobbing. I don't think she realized how deep my love of sports was and the game was. And my NSO said at the time, there's this $5,000 retirement fund that we give you to, go on and move on with the next chapter of your life. And I remember sitting there thinking, that's great. $5,000 is wonderful, but there's more going on between the ears that I don't even know what to do with. So I'm glad to hear those resources are out there now. I hope they're more public than they were when I retired in 2015, 16, whatever it was. But it's that moment of like, here's money. And go away. Well, Kelly, money doesn't solve all the issues there.
I thought you were going to say, "Oh, well, 5,000. I'll take that."
Well, I did.
Yeah, I know you did. It's so true, Claire. Like what you just shared was just phenomenal to know, because there's so many times people just, oh, well, you're done, or walk away, and people feel so forgotten. And we've known that that's hard on a person to change anything, to get out of whatever you're doing, let alone when you've been dedicating yourself. I mean, I know a lot of people in blind sports that moved to Ottawa for a while. It was like the hotbed of training for everybody to train together, and it becomes so much of your culture and life. When it's suddenly gone, what the heck are you doing? And it's certainly, for some people, it's almost like you think, this is all I'm going to do all my life. Yeah, but hold on a sec. At some point, you might want to work. You may want to pay rent through work, or, may have to.
Exactly. Yes. There's a lot of us that are playing pair sports that aren't funded. And to go back to speaking about retirement and athletes going through that decision, from the outside looking in, just general public watching high performance sports, they kind of have this idea of, wow, that must be nice. They can relax and don't have to think about training all the time. And they really don't realize just what goes on it during that time of athletes kind of feel lost of, okay, if they don't have those supports around them and really know what's the next step, where do I go now? Because up until then, I mean, being an athlete, everything's laid out for you. This is what you do on Monday. This is where your next competition is. This is the hotel you're going to sleep in. You really don't have to think about anything other than lifting up a weight or running a track or throwing a ball for so long, and it's daunting. So yes. I will say again, it's very great to see that Canada has those supports for athletes.
Yeah, it's the phrase, the world is your oyster. Man, that world is a big world when all you've had for a long time is one central focus, and that's it. And somebody lets you outside and you go, wow, now what? And, it sounds so great and wonderful at first because you're retired. Actually, a lot of what I got was, you're retired at 27. Got it. What's going, like, people don't click that whole, what's going on in your world. They just look at the age and go, well, that's young to retire and that's young to not be doing what you're doing. But my goodness, Kelly, that world becomes real big when you've been so small and pigeonholed into your sport for so long.
And doing your exercising, you're working out, you're training, everything. And when I separate those, I mean, that's what you do. You do your stretch, you do your workouts on your own. You train with your people, you train with your coaches. It takes up so much time. It's a full-time job. And on top of that, at night, you're eating the right things. You're getting the right amount of sleep. Your life isn't so controlled because you are that machine that is going to perform for a country, that's going to do what you can to be successful. And when the games are gone, we always say, do we forget our athletes? Would you recognize them on the street? Would you go over? And it's such a select few you would. And whether you're getting money or not for your training, whether you're getting rewarded, whether you're an athlete who, gets a medal, maybe gets a bit of money for that, would people recognize you at the food court, at the gym, and come over and say, man, I loved your performance, or, hey, you were great to see in the Olympics. Congratulations. And we know that doesn't happen.
I'll be honest with you guys. I've been recognized, and not very often in this way either, but I've been recognized more for my work done in media than I have as a Paralympian in the sport of bocce. And I think that's real. And again, I just, in case people think there's people stopping me on the street every day, it's not happening. But I've been recognized two different ways from two different people that have said, oh, that's the guy from this or that or whatever. Less so from the Paralympic world, especially bocce, because there's no able-bodied equivalent that you can say, oh yeah, this is this that everybody plays and everybody does, and all that to be said. Just
Olympic athletes will say the same, though, won't they? That as soon as they're done, people don't necessarily, unless they're tremendously, the Warners or somebody incredibly or you're accomplished,
or you're 17 and your name's Summer McIntosh. I mean,
right? Yep,
that works too. But somebody at the security stopped her and wondered what her medals were for. So that person was clearly living under a rock for the moment. But whatever. It's just the way it is. Before we wrap things up, I just want a quick grade from you, A, B, C, or D. How would you say Paris handled the whole Olympic and Paralympic time? Claire, start with you.
A+. We saw some new stuff that we haven't seen in past games. The opening ceremonies were outside, and it's, having the marathon and triathlon in that river wasn't probably the best idea. But overall, I think I'd give it an A+ in terms of accessibility and making it a green space and equality and seeing athletes getting paid equal money. It's we definitely reached a new height and a new bar to set. There's some downfalls, but overall, great Paralympics.
Boy, centuries and centuries of yuck in that river, that's for sure. I agree with Claire. I think for sure solid A. For sure, I would push it to A+, because I like the differences. I like that they had challenges of the weather, and they still came through. It felt like people were enjoying themselves, having fun, and we heard about it for a while before. They propped it up, and they delivered. I really love with the Paralympics, the crowds. I know we talk about, Brock, do all those tickets they claim that were sold, were there enough butts in the seats that really make you say, yeah, they really did? I don't care if people showed on that level, but to sell that, to put money back into your economy and what needs to be when you host and say, this is what we want to do, I was really impressed. And I think for most of us on the Paralympic level, the media, the coverage, the being able to get access and cheer on our people, this is what really makes it successful for me.
Yeah, this was a really, really good games, and I would give it an A. I thought that Paris really wanted the Olympics and Paralympics. You hear often cities don't want these games because of the costs associated with it and all those things. I think Paris showed out and said, we want these games, both the games, and that's where it started. 1.5 million tickets was the final number for the Paralympics that were sold, and that's a tremendous number. Over 500,000, I think, was what they said, that the city got back into venues and things of that nature, and what they'll be able to use for purposing and all that stuff. So very, very good games. The reason I didn't give it an A+, I'm still bitter about the men's basketball program not winning the Olympics, as we were so promised they would do. So that's what tips it for me outside of the A+. But yes, I'm still bitter about that. Kelly, what a pleasure it was to have you a part of our program here today. Thank you so much for pinching in for the two gentlemen who are, one either getting married and the other on vacation. We appreciate it very much.
So one getting married, one hungover? Okay, guys, thank you kindly. I really appreciate it. It's nice to be back with you and doing this again. Always so fun to talk sports and hang out with the Neutral Zone. Congratulations to you guys and all the success you've had. And always love hearing the good things going on. And thanks for giving me something else to do with my week off.
Thank you so very much. And I will remind the audience that Kelly and Ramya moves to an hour format beginning on September 16th on AMI TV and AMI Audio. You can catch that from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. With that, that is the end of our program. I'd like to thank Claire Buchanan, Kelly McDonald. I'd also like to thank our technical producer, Mark Follow. Until next time, be safe, be well.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.